Welcome to Slow Night, Ancient Tales. Tonight, we journey into the beautifully melancholic world of classic Korean literature with Lee Hyo-seok's Design of the Heart. This is a story woven with the rich scent of coffee, the chilly winds of an autumn sea, and the delicate nature of a fragile yet passionate soul. Close your eyes, let go of the day's burdens, and let the gentle rhythm of this timeless tale guide you into a peaceful slumber. The Design of the Heart. While Yura sat on the edge of the sofa flipping through the pages of an art book, I was in a corner of the room boiling water on an alcohol stove, preparing to make tea. Since my ailing wife had gone down to the countryside under the pretext of seeking medical treatment, brewing tea myself had become one of my daily routines. Having brought all the tea utensils into the room, I attached a small table separately next to my thick desk in the manner of Balzac, and placed a large coffee cup upon it. Even though my novels couldn't even begin to match the tail end of Balzac's. As I measured and put 2 servings of mocha powder into the percolator, I secretly observed Yura. She seemed even more emaciated than when we went to the concert the other day. Beneath her gently bowed head, the bridge of her nose stood out sharply, and the areas under her eyelids were deeply sunken like a cliff. Inside them, it was like a small lake submerged in a mountain valley. Her long eyelashes were like a grove of fir trees standing straight along the lakeside. Her pale cheeks, though they used to be plumper, had now shrunk tight as if planed by a draw knife. The picture she was looking at was a sad one. It was a picture of a sick girl lying on a white sheet. Dark shadows fell over her deeply sunken eyes, and tears caught in her frayed eyelashes gleamed like beads within that shadow. Between her blackened lips, a couple of teeth were faintly visible, and the collar of her shirt lay disheveled over her bared chest. Yura, who had been staring at that picture for a long time, suddenly seemed to feel my gaze as she turned the page and lifted her head. Her sparkling, clear eyes were like the reflection of stars in a lake. Although she wore a smile, it was as fragile as the shadow of a waning moon, and her expression was as sorrowful and pathetic as that of the girl in the picture she had been looking at. "It must be troublesome for you to brew it yourself. Since I'm alone, I have no choice." As if this answer were a reproach, Yura put down the book and stood up. "I will brew it." Instead, I sat on the sofa, picked up the art book, and looked at the page she had turned to. In direct contrast to the sick girl on the reverse side, it was a picture of a cheerful girl resting her pointed chin on a plump arm with a broad smile across her face. While I was thinking that the 2 sides of this single page were exactly like the melancholy and bright sides of Yura, Yura brought over 2 cups of highly fragrant coffee and set them on the table. "Brewing it so strong? In the end, it means your wife lost her struggle with this potent tea and went down to the countryside, doesn't it? Let's not speak any more about my wife. Should I also have a showdown with this strong coffee?" Even as we cracked walnuts between sips of tea, I felt that her words were as rich in flavor as the walnuts themselves. On the other hand, I found her quite endearing today, as she seemed somewhat joyful. To sustain her high spirits, I decided to walk the streets as she requested after our tea time. Passing through the streets that had somehow become my designated walking route in life, we reached a high hill flanked by a French church. Fragile and pathetic as she usually was, today she was a strong walker. When the 3 of us, including my wife, used to walk together, Yura would rarely speak, hesitating and acting like a shadow among us. But today, she bustled about with energy and cheerfulness, as if she were the host of the walk. Since your wife isn't by your side, you must feel empty and sad, don't you? Although it sounded like banter or mockery, I could not help but quickly realize that a sorrowful aftertone flowed through her voice. "Oh dear, I think I talked too much today." As she was walking down the hill, Yura suddenly coughed violently. Holding a handkerchief to her mouth, she let out a succession of whole, low, hacking coughs. In the blink of an eye, the white handkerchief was stained like autumn leaves. "Oh no, you must go quickly, get an injection, and lie down quietly to rest." In a panic, I caressed her body, trying to calm her agitated physical state and emotions. It felt entirely like my fault for leading her body, which received a daily shot of yatakonin, into such excitement. After standing and coughing for a long while, Yura finally managed to quiet her cough and walked quietly down the hill. As a couple of colored fallen leaves fluttered down from the autumn branches in the church courtyard, a bell suddenly began to toll, clang, clang, from the high loft of the church. Yura, who had stopped hesitantly as if collapsing while listening to the sound of the bell, slowly took a step forward and recited a fragment of a poem in a sorrowful, sobbing voice. The long sobs of the violins of autumn wound my heart with a monotonous languor. A stanza of Verlaine's Chanson d'automne, recited in French, echoed mournfully as if it would ring even through my own chest. The church bell was the very violin of this poem. I did not know how to soothe Yura's fluttering heart. After sending Yura home and returning, I discovered a messy scribble of hers on the first page of my novel, which she had borrowed a long time ago and returned just earlier. It, too, was a stanza of Verlaine's sad poem. Like her confused and disheveled state of mind, the original French text was scribbled in a chaotic cursive. Il pleure dans mon cœur, comme il pleut sur la ville. Quelle est cette longueur qui pénètre mon cœur? On the following clear Sunday, Yura came to visit early, lightly dressed and appearing to have recovered her health to some degree. Her face, free of coughing, was as calm and serene as the sea at midday. Suddenly, I want to see the sea, the autumn sea. Feeling pity for her health, which was as fragile as asparagus, I rarely refused any of her requests. After swaying in a slow train for a little over an hour, we found the autumn sea. Wrapped in a pitch-black dress and a bright red scarf, her graceful appearance clashed with the dirty pier lined with low warehouses, like a pearl in the sand. Every object, composition, and arrangement surrounding her set Yura's entire being apart, like a precious gem. Even I, standing right beside her, failed to harmonize with her noble appearance and might have been singled out myself. Anew, I felt Yura's sun-like presence, though this might have been due to my own inexplicably unsettled mind. Realizing how much she had gradually invaded the world of my heart, I suddenly felt a tremor in my soul. When we left the pier, crossed the long embankment, and reached the island, the sea, well past midday, began to churn roughly bit by bit. Against the vast, desolate backdrop, Yura's figure stood out even more prominently. She was a sacred, clearly burning ball of fire. Walking along the sandy beach where the waves lapped, we clambered up a rock protruding sharply out of the sea. Fluttering in the fierce wind, Yura's red scarf was a blazing flame. As the harsh wind suddenly whipped up the hem of Yura's skirt a few paces ahead of me while she scrambled over the rugged, rocky hill, a flash of her white thigh struck my eyes like lightning. Though it merely grazed my senses like the scent of a sigh, and though I averted my gaze the instant I saw it, it remained stuck in my vision and would not be erased for a long while. Yura's ball of fire, where black, red, and white swept together and burned, entered straight into my heart and set my chest ablaze. While I stood there blankly, Yura, who had already climbed onto the rock before I knew it, gestured to me carelessly, completely unaware of the turmoil in my mind. Looking down at me as I still stood there dazed, she finally grew annoyed. "Aren't you coming up? The autumn sea is lonely. Oh, so lonely. If only he and I had come together." Yura often referred to her lover by the designation he. Yet I still did not know whether he was a real person or merely an imaginary figure from her dreams. For although Yura would occasionally cry out he loudly as if intending for me to hear, I had never once seen he. Quite possibly he was a fictional character born out of the bluster of Yura's vain nature. Even so, I realized that this single remark suddenly tormented my mind. I couldn't help the rising of a displeasurable feeling akin to jealousy. The more it did, the more my body froze, and losing the courage to leap onto the rock where she sat, I could only stand there for the longest time as if nailed to the spot. That night, Yura finally entered my dreams. It was the first time such a thing had ever happened. Perhaps not just because of my wife's presence, Yura had never once pried open the tightly shut doors of my heart, not even in a dream. Yet that night, Yura suddenly broke through those locked doors into my dream, stealing quietly into my lonely bed beneath the wide sheets. Startled, I kicked off the blanket and sat bolt upright in a flurry. My heart thumping, my face flushed hot out of some immense embarrassment. It was just a little past midnight, but from then until dawn, plagued by countless thoughts, I could not sleep a wink and could only toss and turn. When I met Yura the next afternoon in a cozy tea house on the street, I considered telling her about that dream since we were alone, but before I could, Yura brought up her own dream, which prompted me to keep my mouth shut. It's not that I haven't dreamed of you before, sir, but last night's dream was a first. Hearing the words, dreamed of you, I felt a sudden shiver for some reason. Recalling my own dream from the previous night, I felt my mind needlessly fluttering, wondering what kind of dream she had had. There were 3 people in the dream, you, your wife, and me. A drama unfolds among the 3 of us, as if we are entangled in chains. Within it, your wife's expression and mine remain the most vividly etched in my memory. Finding the content of that dream inexplicably frightening, I did not bother to pry further. Instead, my heart pounding anxiously at her story, I stood up and put a record on the gramophone to ease the chaotic mood. However, the tender melody of the barcarolle softly plucked on a guitar did not break the silence inside the tea house at all. Rather, it evoked a serene and slightly sorrowful sentiment. Amidst this quiet emotion, Yura never lost the passion of her dream. Shall I try making the expression I had in my dream right here once more? If you don't wish to see an unseemly face, come, close your eyes. I'll revive that expression by myself. I patiently closed my eyes for a good while, but realizing the foolishness of it, I suddenly opened them again, perhaps after about half a minute had passed. In that instant, I saw Yura's face pulled up close right in front of mine. The moment I opened my eyes, her face shrank back to the other side like a snail. At that same moment, her facial expression vanished as well. So of course, I missed it entirely without knowing what kind of look she had worn. Returning to her familiar expression, Yura's complexion turned red, then pale, then white, then pale again, and then seemed to flush red once more. Unable to bear the sight of her deep embarrassment, I rose from my seat and restarted the melody of the barcarolle, which had just finished, all the while pondering deeply, as if solving a riddle, what on earth that expression Yura made could have been. Her illness flared up again, and Yura did not show herself for several days afterward. Yet, on my birthday, she arrived early in the morning, neatly dressed up, carrying an armful of various gifts. On your birthday, which comes but once a year, how can you sit before your desk looking so gloomy? In stark contrast to my melancholy, she bustled about brightly, as if it were her own birthday. After arranging a modest bundle of freesias in a vase to decorate the desk, she unfolded the wrapping cloth of the gifts she had brought. What do you think is inside this? It's not Pandora's box, so surely nothing monstrous will come out. As I watched without answering, she took out a bulky birthday cake and placed it in the center of the desk. My name was frosted entirely across the top of the pastry. I was astonished by her meticulous care, and at the same time, feeling apologetic for such excessive concern, I could not find the proper words of gratitude. Today I am Santa Claus. Yura laughed cheerfully like a bride and hung a long stocking filled with the walnuts and chocolates I enjoyed on the corner of the desk. The desk used for writing novels turned into an untimely Christmas table. And tonight, we will light plenty of candles here. Saying so, she pulled out a number of thin candles matching my age and stood them in a heap upon the desk. The top of the desk shone radiantly, and the room overflowed with fragrance. Yet, though she busied herself so compliantly and nimbly, I could quickly perceive that there was something frail and hollow somewhere in Yura's movements. Her face was deathly pale without a single drop of blood. Even so, she reproached my melancholy instead. "My, why are you so utterly listless? If you're not in a good mood, shall we go out for a breath of fresh air?" Thinking that a good idea, I immediately put on my clothes and went out into the street. To make our heavy hearts dance cheerfully, we walked through the most crowded streets possible. After stopping by a music store to listen to lively jazz, we entered a department store where Yura meaningfully pulled my arm and guided me through a maze of brilliant colors to a certain spot. More than anything, you must buy a necktie. I think today's gloom is entirely the fault of that necktie. Come, pick any one of these in a cheerful color. Before my eyes, all sorts of neckties hung like a waterfall of rainbows. When I chose a sober color that suited my taste from among them, Yura looked at my profile as if pitying my level of discernment and said, "How can someone who can't even choose a single necktie properly choose the heroine of a novel? Let me choose one for you. I will chase away your gloom." Reading the sting in her words, which used the heroine of a novel as a pretext to subtly imply that that was why I could only choose someone like my current wife, I stared blankly at her slender figure. "There, how is this? You like it, don't you? If you do, change into it right here. Put the old one away in your pocket." A checkered necktie with red lines crisscrossing through a deep ocean blue. While thinking that though her own refinement and sophisticated wisdom were subtly revealed in it, it was by no means a uniformly bright color either. Was it not both cheerful and sad at the same time, just like the two sides of Yura herself? I changed into the tie she had chosen right then and there, according to her endearing command, and crumpled the old one into my pocket, suddenly trembling at the meaning it implied in the next moment. "It suits you perfectly. Now you can stroll the streets properly, can't you?" She could not have said it thoughtlessly either, and I felt a sharp prickle at the layered inner meanings of her words. My wife's figure suddenly flashed across my mind. Yet it was true that I felt distinctly lighter with the new necktie. Just as Yura said, the condensed gloom seemed to have faded away considerably. However, after refusing my offer and paying with her own money, as Yura stepped out of the department store door, I suddenly noticed something startling and stopped short. I abruptly realized that the wristwatch on her left arm, which she never took off, was missing today. Having only a vague guess about Yura's financial situation, a strange thought suddenly crossed my mind. Could it be that the necktie, the birthday cake from earlier, the bundle of flowers, and all of today's gifts had come out of that wristwatch? "Yura, what did you do with your watch? Why do you ask about such a trivial thing? Why are you just standing there blankly?" Yura spoke nonchalantly and pulled my arm, but I sharply caught sight of her slightly flushed profile. "Why aren't you wearing it today of all days?" I suddenly grew to dislike the watch. It felt as if it were hastening my illness moment by moment. Reviewing this, I knew that this was, of course, nothing more than her clever excuse, and I felt an aching pity for her heart while being unable to suppress my feelings of apology. "Don't worry needlessly. I left the watch at home." As she said this, Yura looked terribly haggard. Her fragile body seemed completely hollow. Worried that she might cough again, I led her as if supporting her, but just as we came out onto the wide street and were about to cross the intersection, our path was suddenly blocked by an unexpected funeral procession. Oh my! Yura, who intensely disliked and feared funeral biers, suddenly recoiled in shock and leaned her entire weight against me. In the blink of an eye, her lips lost all color and turned deathly pale. As if a red petal were being bleached white inside a medicine bottle, her whole body instantly grew thin as a sheet of paper. Though her body was normally light, as she lost consciousness, she hung heavily in my arms. Spitting at the ominous funeral procession, I hurriedly hailed a passing taxi and placed Yura inside. Not even knowing where her house was, I had no choice but to bring her to my own poor home. I laid her on the bed behind the curtains and immediately called a doctor. Under the doctor's emergency treatment, Yura woke up listlessly, like someone emerging from a hypnotic trance. I was relieved, yet her complexion remained pale, her pulse was weak throughout her body, and even the light in her eyes was extremely faint. After administering various injections, the doctor left. The moment the doctor stepped out, Yura sat up abruptly and wore a smile on her sad face. Though it was less than before, a certain gleam returned to her eyes. "Why, where is this? Your room? Your bed? I have finally ended up lying in your bed. It means I've won my struggle against your coffee after all. You must not get up. You must not exert yourself by talking." I rushed over to lay her back down on the bed, striving to soothe her excited emotions. Her heightened emotion, it was beautiful, like a flame flaring up brilliantly for the last time from what remained of its fuel. "I feel as though I have finally come to where I belong, as if I've finished a long journey and reached my destination at last. I can close my eyes in peace. Even if this life ends tomorrow, I will have no regrets." Knowing that every single word she babbled in her excitement harmed her health drop by drop, I had no choice but to threaten her with harsh words. If Yura talks too much, I will walk out into the street. I won't babble anymore, so please don't leave. Don't go, and sit by my side forever. On this bed, on these sheets, then I will tell you about the dream I had some time ago. If you tell me the story, won't that mean you're talking again? Then I will drop the story and show you the expression from that time instead. It has grown dark, so please light the candles. Light every single candle matching your age. Why isn't today your birthday? In truth, as I lit each one of the dozens of candles matching my age, I could not help but marvel once more at her thorough consideration. After lighting them all, I turned off the electric light. The room instantly brightened as if in full bloom, and the desk was as splendid as a feast table. Yet, rather than a brilliance celebrating my birthday, it felt more like the radiance adorning Yura's deathbed, and an ominous premonition tormented my heart relentlessly. The say, "Anli light matching your age is your light, sir. Within this light, I feel as light in body as an angel." Yura's clear eyes burned beautifully, catching the radiance of the candles. Her face was completely overflowing with a look of satisfaction. To me, standing there blankly as if I had lost my soul, unable to even sit at the desk out of a heavy heart, the scent of the white freesias suddenly felt like the fragrance of death. Before that year could even pass, Yura finally departed, vanishing as delicately as the scent of a flower. In contrast, my wife, who had been recuperating in her hometown, recovered her health and came back up. My wife, too, deeply mourned her death. What Yura left behind for me was the scribble of Verlaine's poem, the checkered necktie, and the subtle fragrance of her various thoughts and feelings. The fragrance of the heart. She was an aristocrat of the mind who lived her short life solely through her heart. Though her physical life was impoverished, the life of her mind was rich. Yura, who vanished in solitude, the aristocrat of the mind. Whenever I miss her, I change into her necktie and walk the streets. Then, just as when she was alive, I feel her following closely by my side, her emaciated face sparkling with clear eyes, carrying sorrow in her long eyelashes, taking swift, fragile steps without a single word so as not to fall behind my pace. At such times, I see written upon her face the exact translation of the lines from Verlaine's poem that she had scribbled. As rain pours down upon the city, tears well up within my heart, this sorrow piercing through my soul, whatever could the reason be. Like the lingering scent of freesia and the quiet, sorrowful lines of a Verlaine poem, I hope this story leaves a gentle, comforting warmth in your heart tonight. May the distant echoes of the autumn sea wash away all your worries. It is time to rest now. Have a peaceful, slow night and sweet dreams.